So everybody, we will start doing the lean coffee. I will now call you up here to the list of topics. We're going to create a topic list for us to then vote on. And the goal of these topics is that they should be formed as questions. So not as generic ideas that we could discuss, but rather as questions. And the goal of the discussion then, as we go through the questions, is not to find one answer, but actually to find multiple answers, whatever the question is. And the idea with finding multiple answers comes also from the podcast that I host, the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And it comes from this concept that for any situation, there might be several things that could work. It's not guaranteed that they would work, but there might be several things that could work. And because this is a conference, we're trying to create knowledge. That's one, for me, that's one of the aspects of Agile conferences that I like and that I look for, is to get new ideas, to get inspired to try different things. So that's what we're going to look for also in the discussion later on. But for now, if you could spend some minutes writing down a question that you have. You don't need to put all the context into the question because we're going to have a conversation about it. So we will definitely also go in and talk a little bit more about the context as we go forward. But if you could please write down a question you have, and then after the question, just put your name so that we know who to call to explain the question. And we're going to then prioritize the questions, and we're going to time box the discussion on each of the questions, again, with the aim of creating multiple possible solutions, tools, or answers to each of those questions. So if you could go ahead, and I'll give us 5 minutes to get started, and then if we need more time, then we will get more time. But for now, let's go ahead and start getting those questions written in. And I'll share the screen so that the YouTube viewers can watch the activity as it happens in the topic creation and voting. As you're writing down the questions, let me quickly introduce our hosts for today. And I'll start with Esther Schmit. Esther is in the Netherlands and also hosts her own summit, so be sure to check that out. Esther will tell us all about it.
Yeah, it's the online Scrum Master Summit, which will be held in June. And yeah, you can join there as well. But yeah, for now, we're here at the Agile Online Summit. Being a host, as Vasco just mentioned, I'm an Agile coach and Scrum Master at several companies here in the Netherlands, amongst ASML. And yeah, also trainer, facilitator, and host. So and look forward to these coming 3 days with Vasco and you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Esther. And we have representing Down Under, Mr. David Morris. Go ahead, David.
Vasco, thank you. Yes. So you might be able to tell some of you from my accent that I'm not originally from New Zealand, but I do have some of that accent coming through. Been here for about 15 years. I am an author, coach, and instructor. Do some work independently, but doing most of my work with Epic Agile and all our great clients around the world at the moment. And it's been a delight to front up and curate some content for the Asia Pacific region. So not just New Zealand and Australia, but a bit broader than that too. And as Esther, really looking forward to the content that's going to be happening over the next 3 days, especially the live events like this too. Thank you, Vasco.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you guys as co-hosts here on the summit. Esther is curating the EMEA track. We'll have a few talks from European Agile practitioners, and David is curating the APAC Asia Pacific track. And there's quite a lot of talks also to see from APAC, and a live panel, which will happen in the last day of the summit. So on Thursday, morning time EU, early evening, late afternoon, Asia Pacific time. Right, so we have 2 more minutes. Don't forget there will be some more live sessions today. So be sure to tune to the either YouTube channel if you want to follow on the go, or then join some of those sessions that may require registration. So pay attention to that. Right, and I see some questions already. For those of you who haven't, please do add your names to the cards so that we know who to call on to explain the card. And when we call on you, if you want to put the camera on, that's okay, but just be aware you're being streamed on YouTube. So this is gonna stay recorded forever. So decide for yourself if you want to be there or not. And we have quite a few questions already. In a minute, literally in a minute, we will be prioritizing those questions and then discussing those one by one as we go. Some very interesting questions here already. All right, we're almost done. Remember to put your name if you haven't yet. All right, time is up. And we will start voting now. When you hover your mouse over each of these cards, you will see a reaction, right? There you go. And when you do that, you can choose any action, reaction to it. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna pick one question that you would like to discuss. And we're gonna do a first priority. Then we will come back, and as we go through the discussion, don't forget you can also come back in and add more topics. So we will come back to this board at some point, but we will start with the first topics now. So I'll give us 1 minute to do the voting. So pick one card that you would like to discuss, and then we will start with the first few cards. There's going to be time to discuss many different topics, so don't worry too much. Just pick one that you like, and we will start with that. As we go
Sorry,
through
I'm a little bit confused. So should we just react, or should we put it in the next box?
No, just react. So if you hover your mouse over the card, you will have a reaction option. So just add a reaction. All right, so we'll start with the first priority. And the first one is going to be this one, and then the next one is this one. And we'll start with this first. And before we start discussing, I want whoever wrote the item to just give a quick explanation of what is behind that question. And then we'll go on and have a discussion. The discussion will be in slots of 5 minutes. So we will be able to then, after 5 minutes, decide whether we want to continue or not. So first one was David, what are some of the biggest hurdles to reaching full organization agility, and what can we do about them? David, do you want to give us a short intro to why you're asking that question?
Thank you. Yeah, I thought I'd start with a simple one. I think there's a continual challenge, but as we are looking to take agility to more and more parts of the organization, not just technical, digital, IT teams, there are occasionally things which inhibit that growth, that transformation. And I think those things may be different. My hypothesis is they may be different depending on industry, depending on country and culture. Perhaps I thought this would be a great place to find out what people are seeing. So yeah, that's why I posed the question.
All right. Before we go on to the discussion, does somebody have a question for David? All right, if not, then let's go for the discussion. And here's how we're going to go for the discussion. Anyone can come in and add something, either to clarify the question or suggesting potential insights around that question. And for those of you that are listening, we have a board at the bottom of this mural board. It's called Key Takeaways. And as you are listening to the discussion, a very useful thing to like really sediment the learnings is to write some post-its here where you record some insights, something that you got out of the discussion. And as you do that, right, then that helps you to memorize the discussion, to take something out of it. And it also stays as memory for everybody else who has access to the board. That means you who are here, and then you can come back and read it through and get refreshed, get reminded of this conversation again. So we will start with a 5-minute time box. And then we will go on and do another 5-minute time box as long as we feel is worth doing for this topic. So let me just put the 5-minute timer. And so that's it. 5 minutes I started. And if there's anything that somebody would like to join and add to this conversation, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hi, David. So I'm joining from Prague, and I would like to start maybe with this topic because I think that one of my questions is very similar. So is it okay if I talk, or should we?
Go ahead, Jana. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm confused by the mural being created there. Well, I'm seeing this. I have more specific question, but it's about if we should start with the whole organization with small steps in all departments and coaching and helping, for example, the managers of all the parts of some organization, or if we should start with one specific project or department or product to show the agility to the rest of the organization. So maybe that's one of my struggles, where to start with building the mindset.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, a very, very on point question. I think one of the approaches I found really works is as a sort of a change management approach called lean change management, which is effectively trying to break large change down into small changes, just as we break large features or products down into small things on our backlogs, and prioritizing those, working through them, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And I've found, although it takes longer, I've found that to be more sustainable as a transformation approach. But quite often senior leaders can be a little bit anxious or impatient to get going. But yeah, definitely there is a danger, I think, in trying to do everything, all areas at once and one sort of big bang change. Interested to hear what others think.
So I would add to that I don't think that there is a right place to start. There are many possible right places and wrong places to start depending on the context, Jana. And my preference, though, I mean, I host a podcast called the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, so that should give you a hint where I would start. But my preference would be to start with one team first. Now, that doesn't mean that it's only one team, but, you know, for yourself, for your own challenge, to start with one team first. Now, that team, and here's where I think the Scrum Master role can be significant and even critical in large-scale adoptions. That one team does not need to be a testing team or a software development team. That team can be an executive team. Why not start with a team of managers in a department, for example? And the reason why I say this, and this is just an idea, I'm not saying this is the only way or even the best way to start with. I'm saying that the experimenting firsthand what working as a team means can be very difficult. Did I just lose connection? I guess I did lose connection.
No, you're good.
No,
I'm
right.
good. Okay,
You're
then
still fine.
yeah. Okay, so it's just Zoom that went crazy. All right. So and when managers don't experiment, don't experience what it is to be part of a team, they have very little motivation to accept others to experiment and go through the same. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Now I have lost it.
Oh, yes. We did lose you then, Vasco.
But that's for me, that's quite nice idea or a mindset to start with. Maybe the people who like help decide if agility is the right way, but they don't have the experience with being in a team, because then they don't understand what I'm trying to achieve with making teams. That's a great idea.
David, how big is the organization?
Well, like the development part is 600 people.
Okay.
Like Vasco is dropping and joining.
No worries. I'll come back. But yeah, you need change agents to do this on a team level and build on top of that.
Yeah.
And you need the buy-in from every layer before you introduce the change. Otherwise, it's just going to get spit out, pushed back, and teams will collapse.
Yeah, that's maybe why I don't want to be the one like pushing it. I want to help other people understand why we are doing it. So that's why I don't think that one team only is the best way. But yeah, but having change agents in all the departments would be it's long run to go.
Yeah, just be patient. And I mean, the thing is, it's always impossible until it's done. And then people try copying that and just share the knowledge, the expertise, and you'll be fine. But just don't get folks burned out while implementing the change.
Nice. Yeah. I can see someone put a box on there that says scaling the organization, which is interesting. I've seen more and more written and spoken about recently, people referring to descaling the organization, which is working out how to do things on a smaller scale. So kind of creating more independent or autonomous value streams rather than trying to make everything work as one humongous team. I think it's an interesting analogy because descaling is also something that we do if you have hard water, so that in your kettle you get the sort of little mineral deposits. Descaling is what you do to remove that. So it's interesting to think about descaling an organization can be removing something as well. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thought.
So, like, in a way, if I understood you correctly, that could be breaking the silos approach and adding modules, right? Nice. Yeah, that would work great. That would work great. I mean, yeah, whenever you make any kind of change on that level, you need to rewrite all the procedures, processes, everything, because the rules just don't apply anymore. Not sure how the things work with majority of the folks, but sometimes people don't read whatever documentation you send out. They just head out to do the thing, their thing, and yeah. But it's good to have guidelines revisited. Okay, so what's
Hey everybody, I'm back. I was just somehow my laptop went crazy, and now it's back. I don't know where I left off. I did hear your conversation when I came back in. Perhaps one of my learnings has been that when it comes to working in an agile manner, so focusing on results, weekly continuous improvement and so on, there is one aspect, which is that this can only be done through people. Like, there is no organizational or let's call it process infrastructure that can do this for us. When it comes to where you start, you always have to start with people. Like, it needs to be real people, because the organization doesn't learn except when it learns through what people themselves learn. So the example I was trying to give is, for example, a Scrum Master taking on a management team rather than a development team is one example where you can bring agility to the organization without having to change a lot of teams at the same time, right? Because a lot of what management does is to be kind of a funnel and also a distribution of knowledge and decisions to the rest of the organization. And this thought, this idea comes from accepting that organizations are complex entities, meaning they cannot be predicted at all, even when working in the small with one team, let alone working with multiple teams and even the whole organization. So when we try to go to the whole organization with traditional change management processes, which are typically linear, they call on a series of steps that need to be completed in a linear fashion. Lean change management doesn't do that, and David already mentioned to that, so I would definitely link you guys to that. But when the change management process is linear, it ignores and even it removes, or tries to, it's not possible, the complexity of the change itself. But when we work with people, we can constantly sense and adapt. And this sensing and adapting that we do as change agents, change leaders in practice, is what the organization needs. Now, the organization is, of course, an abstraction. The organization isn't a person. It doesn't know what to ask for, right? But we can sense what is going on, and based on what we want to achieve, then adapt our actions towards that. So my own preference, and this is just my preference, is to start with one team. Typically a development team, that's where it usually starts, but also could be a management team. And then through that learn and then move on to either another team or then bring other people on board and then having multiple people working on the change. But the key thing here is definitely working through people. There's a great book by Michael Duarte and Peter Oliver Kruger that we are publishing next year. It's called Shift from Product to People, which is a very interesting take on what agility really means when you stop thinking about developing better or more products and start thinking about how to get people ready to be agile themselves. And that's a thought that I would leave also with you guys. It's the people that are agile. It's not the processes that are agile. All right, that was the first topic. We already spent quite a few minutes on it, but we can still spend some more. So if you would go to the chat, and if you want to continue to discuss this for another 5 minutes, just type Y or yes in the chat. And if you would prefer to go on to another topic, just type N for next. And if you're neutral, just type OK. But just go ahead, give us your thoughts. All right, we have 6 votes so far. 3 OK, 3 next. And 1 yes. Okay, if nobody else votes, then I guess we go on to the next topic. And the next topic is AI tools for product management and roadmap prioritization. And I don't know who wrote this topic.
Hey, Vasco. Morning, everyone. It's me, it's Johan. Thank you for hosting this and selecting the topic. So I've added a few notes here. I mean, we all know there's a lot of tools out there. It's a big race on who's going to make a better product. But the point is, how do we utilize these tools, or did anyone test out something that really works? Imagine just taking a SOW and putting that into the tool that's going to break it down, populate the backlog, save a lot of time for the product manager or the product owner. You come up with a sprint goal, give it a go for the sprint number 1. You see how it goes, collect feedback from the customer with the team. You review it again, put all the data into the tool. Hey, give us the next round, and you keep repeating that. I mean, it's going to save a lot of time. It's going to give you calculated decisions. It's going to change how things work, right? It's going to speed up the delivery. So, I see this being the next big thing. Ultimately, it's going to come to the automation step at some point. We're not there yet, but I'm guessing within the next 6 months or a year.
All right, that's an interesting take. Any takers? All right, so I can join the conversation by saying that we did a session with 2 product owners in the Product Owner Summit earlier in the year, so springtime. I think you can still find that if you are a VIP customer for the PO Product Owner Summit, you will definitely find it there. And in that session, what they were focusing on, and this, at least for now, I think it makes sense. What they were focusing on was to augment the product owner role. So I'll give you a concrete example, right? So you have a generic idea of what are the things you want to do. So that decision, the exploration, and so on is done by you. And then what they did was that they used ChatGPT to create user stories and acceptance criteria, but they used that as an augmenting technique. What that means is that they went to ChatGPT, they asked for the user stories and for the acceptance criteria, and then they themselves did the editing. Then the other thing they did, which I think was a really great use of the tool, was to create characteristics for personas. So they described the persona in very high level, and then they asked ChatGPT, okay, describe this person's hobbies. And one of the POs even gave a clear example. So they were aiming for Norwegian middle-aged males for that product that they were trying to create, and they actually asked ChatGPT, so what do these people, this target group, do for their free time? And they got a few answers, and of course you still need to do some vetting, right? So don't take the answers as gospel, but obviously that increases the ability to to do research, or makes the research much faster, because otherwise you would need to go and you would need to do that research, and ChatGPT can create a very basic set of characteristics for a persona that you can then use and then have that in the discussion of the product. So at least those two things I have seen and interviewed two guys that started using it that way. There are also some concerns. We can talk about concerns later, but at least those two clear approaches can really augment the work of the product owner.
I fully agree. I mean, I was in one of the sessions where Jeff Sutherland was talking about implementing ChatGPT and tools as a part of a Scrum team, right? And the thing that echoed loudly with the group was the amount of productivity that's going to be increased 5, if not 25 times over the time to come. Now, from the first book, doing twice as much in the same amount of time made a huge impact on the delivery teams and development in general. But if once the productivity skyrockets, things will definitely change, and it will be a challenge to stay on top of all the priorities and incoming requests. We'll be at the point where we'll be just adding a prompt into the text line. Hey, I need this, like adding a feature or a user story, and the machine will produce the code. That will probably happen at some point.
Yeah, so that may happen. I can't see the future. It is fair to assume, though, based on history, that computers are not very good at writing complex code. We have tried that for many years already, with even much more stricter models than what AI could do. But I mean, we never know. That could happen. When it comes to productivity, though, one of the questions that I would ask is, what is the current bottleneck where you work? And there, it might make sense to focus AI on. And actually, we have a session today where one programmer, Marcus, is going to talk about how he used AI and his knowledge of theory of constraints to increase his productivity when suddenly he couldn't use one hand anymore. He broke 2 fingers, so that hand was off. And of course, programmers need both hands to type. So it's interesting to also investigate, okay, so what are the bottlenecks right now? And you pointed to something, and there, I think there might be something we can explore further. What if the bottleneck is the product owner, right? So creating the user stories, making decisions, and so on. What if that is the case? Then how do we tackle it? I don't know of any case study at the moment, but if you have some ideas, Jovan, like concrete ideas on how that could be, I think that would be an interesting discussion. Or anyone else, of course.
There are a few good tools out there already. One of them is, I believe, the Spinach.io, like a virtual AI Scrum Master. I mean, there are products coming to life. Just curious to see if anyone else had the opportunity to use some of these and put them to practice. Like, hey, this works, this does not work, and just trying to collect some feedback.
Does anyone else have experience with using AI in a product development environment?
I've only just recently saw a discussion, or it was a workshop where a product owner shown how they use personas that they described to AI, and they actually pitched their idea to this persona. So it wasn't just to create personas. It was like, if we do this in the product, what would your takeaway be? What would be the pros and cons of it? So I really think that AI can help with like this argumentation or discussion, that it can help in this way. I'm not sure if it could help with like project management. I don't see it. I see it as creating a new process, and that is like managing the AI to be a good manager. And I'm not very hopeful with this way, but to help me understand my thoughts or my customers, I think that's a great way to use AI.
Yeah, so one thing that I've seen many people commenting on, and I've tried it myself and have some experience with, is to use AI as a brainstorming partner. The one thing that AI, at least current large language models, are very good at is to replying to us or asking us questions that seem at least coherent, right, with the topic we are discussing, whatever the topic is. And from that perspective, I think there's a lot of value, because obviously we are, every one of us is tied to the ideas, the models that we have learned. So we are not necessarily open to creative and sometimes stupid questions, which are necessary for us to come to new ideas, right? But the AI isn't tied to that. So it can ask questions that make originally no sense, but then when you start thinking about it in the context of your original problem, then it might generate new ideas. So that kind of brainstorming partnership, I think, can be a great use of something like a large language model tool. I've added the link to the mural board for spinach.io. And one of the things that I have unfortunately seen as well is that sometimes Scrum Masters take the role that they are just kind of organizing meetings and making sure people show up and making sure things are documented. And those are things for which people are not the best, right? So it's very easy for me to imagine an AI that would definitely make sure that people have their meetings in the calendar and even synchronize different calendars and so on, and make sure that the whatever conference links are in the meeting invitations and all of that. That's easy for an AI to do. That's, it's procedural. There's no creativity there. But when it comes to identifying conflict, asking questions to lead to a shared decision-making process within a larger group like a team, I don't know. Maybe there will be, and you never know. There's quite amazing things coming up these days, but I still don't see that as necessarily something that AI could do. But of course, I can be proven wrong anytime now. But perhaps one question related to this that comes to mind is, what is the one thing that we believe AI could help us do much better? Like, and if I take Jovan's question now as a product owner or product manager, like what do we think AI could help us do much better than we are doing now?
Well, for starters, it's a lot faster in analyzing the data, right? And then it would require the human pair of eyes to do the sanity check, right? So at this point in time, the tools are heavily relying on the quality of the input and the questions that prompts that we are asking, right? But it's getting better at a very rapid pace. So yeah, it probably my brain freezed here.
Yeah, no worries.
Process power, right?
Yeah. Processing power is what you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's do the voting again. You can say yes or why if you want to stay on this topic, okay if you're okay either way, or N for next. Please go to the chat, and we can then either spend some more time on this or then move on. All right, we have a few nexts already. All right, I think we have quorum for that. So let's go on to the next topic. And for the next topic, I would invite you to go back to the topic board. And we have questions there already, and I'm going to give you 2 more minutes to add another question. If you have some new questions, first add questions, and then we'll do the voting again. So if you have another question that came up to your mind as you were listening to the discussion, just go ahead. And then we will do the voting and continue the discussion. And while people are writing the questions, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like the video and share with your friends, and also subscribe to the channel. Why not? So that you get the notification when the new videos are coming up. There will be a few sessions today and some more tomorrow, and a live panel discussion on Thursday, hosted by David with APAC track speakers. All right, so no one else is writing anything. So if you would go then through the questions, I'll give us another 2 minutes to vote. And if you would go through the questions and see which question you would like to discuss next and just vote for it, you have the reaction at the bottom left of the post-it when you hover. And some questions already have some votes, and those will count still. And you can also add more reactions to each of the, or to the post-it that you want to discuss, and then we'll prioritize the next 2 and start discussing.
Sorry, just to be sure, should we react to one of them or to all of them that we want?
Let's start with one, because we have time, and we can then come back and add more topics. Yeah. We would like to choose 2 topics now, and then we'll give it more time if needed. All right, time is almost up. And I think we have our next 2 questions. Agile coach as a title and as a Scrum Master. Let's start with the first one, Agile coach as a title. Vladimir, do you want to share your thoughts on that question before we get started?
Sure. Thank you. When you go on LinkedIn or talk with peers, you hear a lot of declining demand for Agile coaches, doubts about quality. ICF as well is not an easy organization, and community has internal issues, and the coach term as an image. And by the way, Scrum Master and the Agile coach initially are the same. And now I see a trend that some experts are renaming and trying to position themselves differently. So shall we all just look for better options? Let's discuss.
Yeah, so I'm putting a specific talk we have for this Agile Online Summit by Sebastian Gellerman. He's challenging quite a lot he's specifically talking about Agile mindset, but I think you will find something related to what you just said. Yeah, so that's a great and challenging question. Any takers?
Well, I live in a mindset where titles are not important. So I think it doesn't matter how we name it. It's important how we live it in the organization. So if it's Agile coach or Scrum Master or Agile Master or Change Manager, I think it's the same way. You can always work in an Agile way, even if you are a process manager. So that's my, that's my take on it.
Yeah.
I have few thoughts on this. So
Go ahead.
basically, I have experienced while working as Scrum Master. I think Scrum Master can certainly help Scrum teams as a coach. So I don't think that specifically Agile Coach title or Agile Coach role should be there to coach the teams. But of course, if the teams are pretty immature and if Scrum Master needs some helping hand to the adoption of Agile throughout the organization, it would make sense to have Agile coach. But as the previous participant said, it's just a title. As a Scrum Master, we are a servant leader to coach the teams all the time. So my take would be servant leaders should be capable enough to coach the teams. But yes, if you have Agile coach already there who can consistently guide the teams as well as leadership as well as Scrum Master, that is also good. But that is not a must-have. That is how I think.
Thank you, Suruchi. How about what others think as well on this topic? All right. So one of the things that I have learned from experience is that one should never underestimate the power of titles in the organizations that we work within. They could be either positive or negative. That's up to us to figure it out. But one thing that I found was incredibly powerful and also important to me as I was, in my Agile journey early on, was to have concrete things to attach my development of my profession to. Now, those could be titles or they could be other things, right? That they don't need to be titles, but sooner or later it will come to a title. And I'll give you a concrete example from my own experience. When I called myself a project manager, I definitely had a different mindset than when I started calling myself a Scrum Master and Agile coach. And the tools that I often referred to were also different. And what I expected from the teams I worked with was also different. So I think that the titles can have quite a big impact, both in the organizations as well as in the way we see ourselves. So I would not necessarily discount that. To Vladimir's point that maybe there's a declining demand. Yes, that may be the case, and especially depending on which part of the globe you're in and which market you're in, that may have a big impact. But I would rather think about, okay, so how do I want to develop myself and what would best represent that? And for example, when I think about myself and the work that I do, I don't want to be a project manager. I don't think that reflects what I would like to do when it comes to the industry that I work within, right? Like software-based product development industry. So I also take the perspective that the names we call ourselves or the identities we take on are actually quite critical for us individually. And they also have an impact on the organizations that we work with. Has anyone experienced that, like been in an organization where a certain specific role title was not welcome?
I can share. So
Go ahead.
yeah, so hi all. I just recently had that situation that at my full-time job, I worked as IT consultant, so a lot of project management was involved. Yes, and I had my own Scrum Master project where we introduced Agile and set up Scrum to non-IT business. And I was Scrum Master there. And so for me, it was just like very visible that, of course, I took something very good from Scrum Mastery to project management. It helped me a lot. For example, asking questions to my clients differently that I did before. But as a Scrum Master, I sometimes fall into that management role. So I wanted to manage. So it took me some time just to relax and remind myself I can be even silent and things are happening. Yes. And I found, that it was a very good life example for me that titles actually matters. And in each role, you need to act differently. And also people expectation is different as well.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point, that the way others look at you also changes depending on what title you would like to be or would like to have yourself, even though the organization may or may not have a title for that. There's some weird titles out there. So Agile Master is one that I've heard. Scrum Coach is another one that I've heard. Scrum Facilitator is another one that I've heard. So there's quite a few titles out there that may have different impact on how others look at us. So that's something to be aware of. But of course, it is very important to acknowledge that context, like the company you're in, the team you're working with, the people around you, will have a big impact also on what title makes sense. So it's not necessarily easy to say, hey, this title is the right one or this title is the wrong one.
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, David, go ahead. I mean, it doesn't get worse than the lead enterprise Scrum delivery manager.
Yes, that's good. I was going to add to that. It's interesting how important we often, our identity at work is often tied up so strongly in the job titles we have. And when I've led combined teams of project managers and Scrum Masters, and I entertained the notion of using different job titles, project managers particularly had a challenge with that until I was able to say to them, look, on your CV and on LinkedIn, still call yourself a project manager, but we're trying to communicate that we're bringing a different mindset to the space, to the role. And eventually most of them got that. But I think what's important is, yes, a job title can reflect the mindset we're bringing to a role and therefore help manage other people's expectations of what we do. But we still also have all of the experience, and that's one of the beautiful things that you were saying, Alina, that your role as a Scrum Master, you had transferable skills that you could bring, even though your role then was as project manager. You didn't put all those Scrum Master experiences and skills in a cupboard. You brought them with you and understood how to apply them in a different context. So I think we don't forget those core skills, even if we do front up into a different sort of role as well. So I think, yeah, we need to remember that what we're like holistically, all of the experiences and skills that we have through the things that we've done.
Yeah, and our toolbox is going to be different depending how we call ourselves. So if nothing else, just be mindful that what you call yourself does matter. Maybe what others call you doesn't matter, but what you call yourself does matter, and it will influence how you see the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed when I was working at the large company, I was agile coach, and then I went to a smaller company being a scrum master. But I was so in my agile coach role still that I was almost wanting to help all the other teams and the management. And so, yeah, but I had to stick to basically to my scrum master role. However, I do feel a bit more of a need to also coach the management as well. So although it's not officially my role, the good thing is that management does acknowledge that I'm also an agile coach. So they also accept when I coach them kind of under the carpet, kind of like.
So, Esther, how do you tackle that conflict yourself, like for yourself, not for others necessarily, but like how, do you have some reflection technique that you use to kind of decide, okay, I need to step into the agile coaching role now, or like how do you tackle that yourself?
Well, I noticed in the beginning, I was really still in an agile coach role, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I don't think that's my role. So yeah, it was really like a self-reflection. Okay, wait, hold on, I'm being a scrum master, not an agile coach. So it's really, self-reflection. Even though other people did not say anything, it was just me trying to reflect to myself, okay, what's actually, what's part of being a scrum master and what's part of being an agile coach. But because I was an agile coach for like 3 years, it was so in my system to try to coach other scrum masters, to try to coach other product owners. Even though I still take a bit of that role, trying to get, for example, the Scrum Master community within the company, get that more going, even though I believe that, often that's more of an agile coach, but I take a bit more of a first role in that as well. So yeah, it was more self-reflection on like, okay, so what is part of an agile coach and what's part of a Scrum Master, and then act accordingly.
Yeah, and self-reflection is so important for us. Remember that we are very often, as coaches and scrum masters and even product owners, we are very often helping others reflect, right? And we can't do that unless we are doing that ourselves. So I think that the Esther's point about self-reflection is extremely important.
Yeah, Vladimir, I said I see your be careful with coaching management without a request. Yes, I agree. But the good thing is I'm freelance. So I'm also like a consultant. So first of all, I don't, I do the best I think seems fit. So what I think is best for the company. And if I lose my job because of that, I think I'm less concerned because instead of being an employee. I do what I think should be done. And if that means that I will lose my job then or my assignment, then that's it. But I believe that I should do what's best for the company and for my teams. So yes, I've been blunt with some management saying, okay, well, you can pull people from my team to another team because they're trying to set up another team, but know that I will, make sure that this team stays how it is, and I will protect them. So get ready for me, protecting them and saying no, basically, or find a solution. So yes, doing that, and also with the manager, saying things like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, that's not agile, because he was like, no, I want them to do this, I want them to do that, and I will take control of this, and I'm taking control of this. And I'm like, okay, maybe you should let things go first, or learn to let things go first. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I will do that anyway, because I think that's in the best interest of my teams.
Yeah, that's one advantage, of course, of being a freelancer. We then are responsible for the consequences when we take that option. So,
but they're hiring me they're hiring me for a certain job to do things right. And yeah, if that means.
And in some, just to be also quite like culturally mindful, in some cultures, that's perfectly okay. People accept to be told no. while in other cultures it's just not going to work. So be mindful of that.
Yeah, I might not work very well in other cultures. The Dutch ones are quite blunt and accept things like that. But yeah, so I might not be very very successful in all cultures. Yes.
All right, so let's take a temperature reading quite quickly. So please type yes if you want to or Y for keeping this topic, one more time box, and for next topic, and okay if you are okay either way. All right, I think we have quorum, and we'll go on to the next topic. And let me bring the topic to the discussion board. And the topic is Surushis. As a Scrum Master, would it be okay to run Scrum teams without measuring velocity? Surushi, do you want to give us a little bit of context?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Vasco. And thank you, participants, for selecting this topic. So this is where my question is leaning towards. I know most of the organizations use velocity as the performance metrics. Of course, that calculates how long user stories within particular sprints have taken to complete their specific estimate, how long they take time, and total number of story points will be considered as a velocity for one Scrum team member. So his question is leaning towards, is it okay to use velocity as a performance metric for teams and comparing their performance? And if not, for example, if we don't consider, some teams are not believing in story points, is it okay if let them just deliver the product? No measuring. Is it okay? And as a Scrum Master, can we allow the teams just deliver the products without measuring them? Or do we want to have some other measuring metrics, like, for example, evidence-based management, something like that? So my question is, or I would like to learn the thoughts from this group. How would be the ideal approach to get the measurement of value from the teams?
That's a very good question, Suruchi, and one that I think our community struggles with. So any takers, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think as long as a sprint goal is achieved, then that's fine. Do not care about story points. Yes, so for me, like, goal of sprint and also product goal is more important than velocity and story points. And maybe also it's good to have them just to measure complexity, but then it should be agreement in team. So how do we do that? And then it makes sense for a team, to use it to help, rather than measure their productivity or performance.
I think Jovan was next, then it's Ilya.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, story points are not mandatory, and this is just a team metric. You don't have to focus on that. And I second the focus on having the sprint goal in place along with the sprint backlog. That's what your team needs. And you could measure the cycle time and other items, but not to get too much into this. You don't need the story points. It's been a hurdle in the community for decades now. Over to Ilya.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to point out, you said that when presenting the topic, it was said like many companies use velocity as performance metrics, and it is okay not to use story points to measure value. Story points are neither a performance metric nor a metric to measure value. I think this is important to keep in mind and point out. I mean, if companies measure story points, they should know why they do it. And there are other metrics to measure value that are kind of you already mentioned evidence-based management. There are many other options. There are metrics that you can use to measure performance. And if you're using story points, it should be clear that kind of you're trying to get better at forecasting. Maybe this might help you to understand capacity management for the next sprint, but taken as performance or value metric, it is basically what you call a vanity metric. So I'd say it's not okay to use story points to measure performance or value.
Yeah, Ilya makes a great point. Jana, you're next.
Thanks. I completely agree with Ilya. I had some very similar like thoughts in my mind. I just want to say it maybe it's a funny story when we started using story points and we said to the developers, if anybody except for the team, that means you and the product owner, uses this to measure something or to compare you to somebody, we are stopping using them. We will stop using them. So the main focus was it needs to be valuable for you as a team, as a common agreement, as a help, but not as a measure for management or performance. So yeah, that's I think the key takeaway for me is know where to use and how to use it, because it can very easily be crooked and misused. Yeah, and then all the developers and the whole team is has this heavy feeling about stuff. Like I came as a Scrum Master, and I think some of the tools were used not very well, and they have how is it called, that you like that you assume what will happen, what it means, but it doesn't have to be that way. So just be careful not to shift the focus of a tool.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Don't forget that any metric can be misused, even the good ones. So keep that in mind. Suruchi, you raised your hand. Go ahead. We still can't hear you, Suruchi.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Is it better now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So basically what I'm trying to conclude with this overall thoughts is we should not be getting confused between what is the value and what is the metric that we are using. Velocity cannot be used as a value delivered by the team, because some of the Scrum team members may have or Scrum teams may have higher velocity, but that doesn't prove that they are delivering value at the end.
I would add to that the point that if what we want to measure is value, then we need to define the metric that represents that value. And there's some techniques we could talk about that. Maybe it is customer acquisition, maybe it's lifetime value, maybe it's feature adoption, whatever that is. But I would add that we need to define what value is. Jana, you're next.
That's a great
yeah, I just wanted to add maybe that I don't see the point of comparing teams based on velocity, because that's based on story points. And in my opinion, story points are specific for every team. So if you do the estimation in story points, each team can have different value in story points, even if the work, if it's the same amount of work. So if you don't use story points as how many days something will last, so I hope you're not using it for that. I think that every team can have their specific estimation in story points that is not comparable if you don't do it in like multi-team measure.
And let's not forget that the fact that a team delivers a lot of story points does not mean that they have reached their goals. So story points are used very often as a relative complexity, risk, and effort assessment metric, and it is assessment. It's not measuring the actual risk, complexity, and effort. It is just trying to assess what it is. But the fact that a team does a lot of things, that does not mean that they are actually delivering value. And the other problem is that if we think that metrics like story points relate to value, then we are going to try to maximize them. And that means we're going to maximize the work done, which is the exact opposite of one of the Agile principles, which is simplicity, the art of minimizing or maximizing the work not done, so minimizing the actual work done. And in software, we need to take into account that code is a liability. More code means more bugs, more things to maintain, and potentially a lot higher cost in the future. So a critical function of the product owner role, for example, is decide what not to do as well. So Kumar, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, so just I want to add what I experienced that when we are pushing towards velocity, people start manipulating to having the higher value. So something I experienced that they are just giving unnecessary story point, which doesn't make any sense. The solution, what I felt that we should have the KPI that should not come from the top management. Team should decide which KPI metrics we want to keep it for the team and also review periodically. So some of the metrics might not sense after a certain period. So teams should decide, and it should show our improvement, not our velocity, how we are from in terms of value and whatever you want to measure. Teams should have a sense to do it. But the many team I heard, they don't periodically review what metrics they are measuring. So I was talking with many clients and they say, oh, once we freeze, so we're just talking the same KPI for the 1 year and 1.5 years. And probably some of the metrics doesn't make sense. So we need to decide that a team agreement, whatever the agreement we flow, after 6 months or 3 months, we need to review it. And probably there would be some different KPI we can set it for our team.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Kumar. I would like to emphasize what Kumar just said, which is reflect on whatever metrics you might be using regularly. Right, so we're getting close to the end here, and we're going to do a very quick round of takeaways. So if you want to contribute to that, just go below. There's a board named Key Takeaways, and in there, you can write what are some of the key takeaways that you took. I'll do a round for anyone that posts a key takeaway here. So just write the key takeaway, add your name to that post-it, and then we'll do a quick round before we finish off here. And I'll give you 2 minutes to write that down. And as people are writing down, let's start with David this time. David, if people want to know more about you, the work that you're doing, and also the APAC track, where should they go?
Yeah, no, thank you. So a lot of the work I'm doing at the moment is with Epic Agile, as I mentioned before. So on LinkedIn, certainly we talk about all the things that we're doing there. But with the APAC panel, the APAC track coming up, we've got another live event tomorrow with Alex Slowly talking about breakout room coaching, which is quite exciting. Looking forward to that. And then, as Vasco mentioned earlier, on the final day of the summit, we've got a live panel discussion with all the speakers who have taken part in the recorded interviews throughout the week, so that anybody that's watching those, if you've got questions for any of those speakers, that'll be a great event, a great opportunity to pose your questions live. That will be streaming through YouTube as this is as well. And yeah, some brilliant topics coming up that have been pre-recorded as well.
Thank you, David. Esther.
Thank you, Vasco. Well, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Esther Schmit with SCH, and you can look on my website, agileprocenter.com. On the online Scrum Master Summit.com, where you can kind of like already enroll for next year. So we will keep you posted for next year. Besides that, I'm a volunteer at Women in Agile Europe. So you can see me on the 14th of November on the conference here in Holland. If you're interested, so that will be womeninagile.eu. And then tomorrow we have a live session with Ilya at 6 o'clock with the Central European time, still summertime, by the way. Yeah, we have some other sessions going live in the EMEA track with the keynote speaker Artur Margonari, which will be a very fun conversation we had. So definitely check that one out. And there's some other ones as well, which you can find on the website. Agile Summit, Agile Summit, what is it? AgileOnlineSummit.com.
Yeah,
yes.
Indeed. Thank you, Esther. All right, so we'll do a quick round of the takeaways. So first we have Jana, use AI to focus on the bottleneck in the team. Do we still have Jana? Yeah, so go ahead. Any words on that?
Well, I don't think, I didn't expect to have a talk about those. I think it's
fine.
pretty
You don't
well,
need to.
Yep.
That's good. Right. So you want to skip that then? That's fine.
Yeah, we don't have to focus on any of mine. I think they are self-explanatory.
Very good, Jana. Thank you for that. And we have the next one. I don't know who wrote this. Agile transformation starts with people.
Hi, Vasco. I wrote that. Yeah.
Hey, Alina, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I believe the discussion here was really really good to better settle this thought in my mind, because for example, in our organization, we have focused so much on processes or on other things, but sometimes we keep forgetting that the transformation starts with people, and Agile means actually the people there, and not which frameworks we use or which methods or so on and so forth. So yeah, this is more like a reminder not to forget that we need to start with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said, Alina. The next one is the titles we call ourselves are important as they define how we look at the problems we face.
And this is a great statement, but I placed also lead enterprise Scrum delivery manager as another warning where not to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget that statement is true for good and for bad. Right, and we have a couple of tools there, also the link to the Lean Change Management website. Somebody wrote, I think, Suruchi, did you write new knowledge gained on how to use AI in IT?
Yes.
You want to add something to that?
This is mine. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I never used AI as a Scrum Master, so there was pretty good conversation. I do plan to refer to the diagram also that we created as a team. So definitely it added value to my knowledge.
Absolutely. And Vladimir's copy-pasted Ron Jeffries quote, I may have invented story points, and if I did, I'm sorry now. Vladimir, do you want to add to that?
I think our discussion concluded that it's a popular misuse of the story points. And who is aware should be now cleaning the mess.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron has been very vocal talking about the consequences and also alternatives. So it's good to have his words brought up here. And the last one we have here is holistic view of your skills. I don't know who wrote that, but would you like to add some words?
It's me. Yeah, so that's something David told. Yeah, and I can relate to that. That sometimes you need to have this holistic view of your own skills, and then they are interconnected, and you may use them in different spheres and under different titles. So you just need to be aware of them and do not fall into that trap that, okay, I am now Scrum Master, and just what I know about Scrum and what I can do as Scrum or what I have to do. No, it's just like whole you should be present.
Yeah, the whole you should be present. That's very well said. So we're getting to the end. I will stop the YouTube stream now. For those of you live on YouTube, it was a pleasure to have you here. And I'll see you in the next stream happening later today. And those of you who want to